Hello, my name is Zahar Karetsky, and this is the Transitions Visions podcast, a podcast series about and for the sustainability transitions community. Notoriously, social sciences PhDs struggle, compared to life sciences PhDs, to get hired by quote-unquote industry in case they want to quit academia. Today's podcast will be, like the previous one, more geared towards transition studies PhDs who are wondering where their PhD trajectory may lead them. I talked to Hade Dorst, who is a fellow transitions scholar, and she's working as strategy and policy advisor in the Netherlands Organization for Applied Scientific Research, also known as TNO. And TNO is one of the largest non-university research centers in Europe, and maybe even the world, and Hade was happy to share her story and talk about what she's doing there and how she got this position. We recorded our conversation in a kind of a on-the-road setup again, because sometimes I like to get out of my office and meet people. So this time we met at a conference in the Dutch town of Enschede. Please enjoy our conversation, and as usual, you can reach me on LinkedIn and other socials. So, Hade, we are now here in a great city of Enschede at the conference of EU SPRI.
Live from EU
Live from EU. So it's a good moment to catch up. And I also had a bunch of questions for you.
Yes.
That could be interesting for also for PhD students, I can imagine, in transitions. So Hade, you are working in TNO. You have, first of all, you've been a PhD student in transitions.
Yes. Correct, at Utrecht University, the Copernicus Institute.
Right.
And before that I worked at the Ratenau, that's where we met.
That's where we met?
So
yes.
There's a sort of line there that leads directly to USPRI.
There's a continuity there.
Yeah, exactly.
From there to here. How come how did you switch from academia to TNO? So now you're a consultant or...
Researcher still.
Research.
We within TNO we have different tracks, although you can in practice always be a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
But I would say researcher first and sort of advisor and consultant second. Well, actually, interestingly, I first switched from sort of researcher advisor to PhD because of course I started at the Ratenau where you have one leg in practice, so to say. But then I figured, okay, who am I to give all this advice to our policymakers without knowing where my knowledge comes from or how the knowledge even gets to be knowledge. And then I figured, okay, I want to pursue this PhD. But it was always with the focus of then trying to be in any way impactful in society. So after I finished the PhD, I considered different options, even applied for different options, even got accepted for different options, and then chose TNO because I thought that would be sort of the most best of both world option that I could find. So I always have trouble choosing, and choosing between being even more in practice, for urban development type of consultancies.
That's your specialization.
Urban development, urban transitions, and governance of urban transitions, I would say, is my specialization. And then so that on the one part of the how do you say this, spectrum, and then on the other end would be a purely academic position, but then I thought at TNO you could do a little bit of both. And indeed, I think that is the case.
We'll get into that. What exactly TNO
exactly.
So, but it's interesting, what kind of positions did you look for? You said you had different options.
So I also looked for a postdoc position. But very practical consideration also arose at the time that I finished my PhD, because I was pregnant with my first kid now a couple of years ago. But then the postdoc was so temporary, like it was a year and a half. So I figured, okay, then I start this postdoc, then a few months from now I go on leave, and then after I finish the leave, I have to find a new job already while I have a baby at home. And like I thought I need some stability. So that was not the only reason, but it was a part of the reason that I ended up choosing like a more fixed position, which TNO offered at that time. I also considered a position at a urban development consultancy firm, because I thought maybe I should quit academia totally. Maybe all PhD students recognize that sentiment. I'm not sure. But in the end, I chose against it because I didn't want to. I actually really like being a researcher.
So you kind of are in this spot where a lot of scientists are open to choose between academia and industry, quote unquote. And not a lot of social scientists are able to do that. And in transitions, as a social science is also, it's also part of it. So how was it for you? What kind of advice maybe you can give for people who are looking to switch to quote unquote industry?
I think it helps to be a little bit flexible in terms of the topics that you're interested in. At least that had helped. It helped me to be within my specialism, to be a little bit of a generalist. So of course, when you finish the PhD, you are a little bit of an expert into a certain type of topic, but especially transition studies really allows for that diversity of expertises to be combined. So for instance, my background is in urban geography, urban planning. I worked at the Rathenau Institute, which was more about science system assessment and innovation policy. So I got interested in innovations in cities. Then at Copernicus, the transitions studies was really appealing. So I always liked working a little bit interdisciplinary, also transdisciplinary. I always mix up these terms, but that you work with other types of actors as well and combine knowledges. So advice would be a little bit of flexibility, or to put it differently, have different interests. Like after 4 years studying one topic, I was also interested to learn more about other related topics in the field of urban governance and urban transition governance. But I think our field really allows for that. So, I mean, I almost want to say that shouldn't be a problem for us. But
for us,
yeah.
And organizations like TNO, they understand interdisciplinarity and transdisciplinarity and see the value of it, right?
Yes, I think so. Let's dive into the barriers straight away. I think it's also really difficult to not to be interdisciplinary in terms of knowing a little bit about different topics, but having one leg in practice and one leg in academia in reality is very difficult, because a lot of projects and the practice-oriented project and even short-term consultancy projects that I'm not really involved in too much, but they are always more pressing than writing your next article. So writing the next article is always sort of last on the to-do list. Sometimes there's not even budget left to do it. So that's I think the main struggle, to remain in touch with the body of literature, with your other more academic colleagues. That's always that's at least my experience. Yeah. It's very impact driven, which is really nice, and you have a lot of direct contact with. Well, for instance, we work a lot with local governments. We speak to various people a lot. So you have a lot of access to empirics, If you look at it purely from the academic point of view, like empirical data is so rich and we have so much access to it, but then to turn that to take the time and reflect on that, turn it into and write about it.
Yeah.
That's very difficult. Yeah. For
Well, I
me
guess
at least, you need to be a bit handy. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess if you are in TNO, which is already, so you said it's partly research, partly
Yeah.
empirics.
Yeah, we have a lot of colleagues who are actually affiliated to universities, for instance, that have done PhDs. So there's definitely a recognition of the importance.
Right.
Yeah.
How international is TNO amongst your colleagues?
Actually, we have quite some colleagues that our main language of our team is currently English because we have a couple of colleagues that are not Dutch, that don't speak Dutch, and we work in quite some EU projects. So we work in international consortia, I have to say. It's a choice. You see some colleagues that have a preference for the Dutch, the Dutch context because that's where their expertise lies. Especially if you look at urban planning, for instance, or energy regulation or regulatory stuff. It usually the national context is very important and influential. For me personally, I really enjoy working in those more international-oriented contexts. So there's the option for me to do so, to choose those types of projects.
So in principle, it's not a problem if a person is not super knowledgeable of the Dutch context or even fluent in Dutch language.
No. But I think eventually it is expected that if you stay there for like 5+ years, that you will learn some Dutch.
Right.
There will be team meetings with larger, like department meetings, that will be fully in Dutch. So if you really don't speak it, that might feel a little bit isolated. Then. Yeah, so it's a bit of both. And for me, it's difficult to judge. I think you would have to ask one of my international colleagues how they really experience it. Because for me, it's easy to say, yeah, sure, we're so inclusive and we all speak English. But in practice, of course, when you stand around the coffee machine, most of your colleagues will speak Dutch.
That could be another episode, like an international experience.
Yes.
TNO.
Cool. Yes. Well, I have some colleagues that I can recommend.
Fantastic. You said that you had to be flexible, coming from your PhD, which is very sort of focused on one topic.
Yeah.
And then at an organization like TNO, you have to be more open to different kinds of topics. How much did you have to reframe your kind of your background
I think
to be able to function in TNO?
Yeah. I think it also really applies to our particular department, which I probably should have introduced at the start. But I work at the Strategy and Policy Department, which is called TNO Vector. It's a Center for Societal Innovation. We just changed the name last year, but anyway. But that's a particular group within the broader organization of TNO, which is quite a big organization with departments that are sort of sectorally divided. So we have the built environment, energy, circularity, mobility is a big one, digitalization. Digitalization and our department are actually departments that are sort of cross-sectoral. So we always work together with colleagues from the other departments, sometimes on energy, sometimes on health, sometimes on mobility. So that means that you have to be willing to also learn about their topics and see the relevance for governance and policy making. Make those connections. But I guess that's more integral also to my interests, which is like urban governance, where all those domains meet anyway.
Makes sense. Yeah. So, would you say that your knowledge of urban governance helped you most, or helps you most in your current job, or is it more other kind of skills that have prepared you during your?
Yeah, I think it was definitely also that systems perspective that is part of in transition studies. So being able to to understand the interconnectivity of different system parts, like institutional perspective. Yeah, I don't feel, coming back to your earlier question, that I had to reframe it a lot. But for instance, in my PhD, I worked on the topic of nature in the city as a sort of more innovative way to think about planning and developing our cities, but from a transitions perspective. So what holds back that type of innovation, so to say? And now I also look at all other kinds of innovations. I'm not so sure about the word innovation, whether it always applies, but for instance, I'm now working on how cities across Europe implement their climate contracts. So it's not necessarily only related to nature, it's really across all domains. Or I look at collective decision making, like energy collectives, health collectives, how do they learn, how do they progress. So, but I think all those examples are all related in the end to urban governance in transitions or for transitions. So that's a broad topic in my mind, that all these, I just have so many interests that link to that. And that's, I think, the nice thing of an organization is like TNO. Like my colleagues work on all these things, so there's hopefully always an opportunity to to find something that you find interesting. But I also have to say, like the topic of nature-based solutions that I was interested in was not so present in TNO when I started there. It's slowly gaining more traction. Also the notion of biodiversity, but it was so technology-oriented and technology and innovation-oriented, and nature is still often not really taken into account that much, and ecology and ecosystem services a little bit, but I see the interest growing, and slowly my colleagues are finding me like, oh hey, we have someone at TNO that knows a little bit about this, and that's really nice, a nice development. But I could definitely not just pick up where I left at the end of my PhD. I did have to sort of embrace a lot of different other types of projects. Yeah.
And I could imagine you could have found a smaller consultancy firm that is in the Netherlands is kind of full of there's a lot of smaller companies that do research for clients, municipalities. Where you chose for TNO, was that a conscious, deliberate choice? Why did you do that?
Well, I don't think it was. It was a little bit of luck as well, because there are quite some links between like former colleagues of the Copernicus that went to work at the TNO. TNO being more familiar name, like I think that helped. It's definitely not like I would exclude working at a smaller organization. I wouldn't have minded that either, but just ended up here in terms of I don't know how do those things go. I'm not sure, but yeah.
So you were you knew maybe TNO was more on your mind because you knew people moving in between Utrecht
and that they're working on these topics of urban transitions.
We talked about interdisciplinarity, very good. Maybe a bit about what you actually do at TNO. How much freedom do you have?
Ooh, that's a tricky question, because when I'm among colleagues, I would definitely complain about the freedom that I get. But of course, that's all relative, because I remember from academia, if that's the comparison, then there's also like responsibilities in terms of teaching, etc. And here you have those responsibilities in terms of project management. Like you have to account for your hours, you have to budget for your project team. Like you cannot just start exploring a body of literature and then thinking, I think this is interesting to dive into a little bit more. It's really you have to really plan in advance, and sometimes you join projects that have already been planned and advanced, and you are more you are contributing on particular tasks, particular set deliverables. So it's a little bit more strict in that, or stricter structured in that sense, I think. So it's a bit up to your own ingenuity to mold the opportunities that you get like into a work portfolio that you like. Yeah, I think.
Interesting. And of course, so there's a network, or at least there are opportunities to. It's not like you're assigned projects. It's more like you are open to.
I would say it's more like you're asked. Actually, you're over asked. So you definitely have to say no a couple of times a month, because you can in principle join everything that you like. There's always, and I understand from colleagues that of course there were times that the projects were not so that there were not such a big list of opportunities, so you are assigned, because in the end you are working for an organization. You're not like on your own, and but now in the current environment there are so many things going on that you can pick a little bit. Yes. Yeah. But of course there are necessary things like the things I just said, like you have to account for your budgeting or that type of stuff. Of course, that's part of the part of your work.
Nice.
Yeah.
Comparing to when you worked during your PhD, you also had a project, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So what is the difference between doing a project in academia and doing a project in TNO in terms of work, even like work culture and communication styles?
Well, I had quite some luck during my PhD. I was part of an EU project as well with a really good collaborative project team, I would say. And actually, coincidentally, I am still through different route now again sort of half working with former colleagues. So I mean, it's a small world. So there are some similarities in terms of those EU project structures where you are taking up work packages and tasks and etc. with a group of colleagues in various settings. And then within TNO we have quite a lot of those multi-year projects, but we also have shorter running projects or assignments. For instance, the ministry asks us to do a foresight exercise of like 6 months. We do those too. Like those are shorter running assignments. But at this point, I'm only involved in multi-year projects, basically. Yeah. So that's actually a bit similar. I would say within TNO there's a more team-oriented work culture. Like you never do. Yeah, maybe some colleagues might experience this differently, but it doesn't really matter whose name ends up being the first one named on the deliverable or something. You sort of pick it up together. And
oh, that's nice.
I mean, it also has disadvantages because sometimes it's very difficult to see the impact maybe or the contribution that you then personally make to a broader project team. During my PhD, of course, the PhD is very much also about compiling that body of papers that then forms your dissertation. So that's really on your mind. And of course, I don't have that now. Like, I still like to write papers, but mainly because of the it gives me the space to think about, what have I learned, what have I, building up some sort of a knowledge base or something.
So how are people evaluated, assessed in terms of their impact in the organization?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's an ongoing question also within our organization. And we just had like a couple months ago a new information on making this a more transparent process, because there are a lot of questions like how people progress in their career and what that is measured by. But if you are more oriented towards like an academic profile within TNO, then of course the number of papers is still important, and the way you are. I mean, it's a bit traditional still. I mean, they try to also take into account less quantitative indicators, but in practice that's a bit difficult.
Okay.
Yeah, but it will be done. So it's it's not a full answer, but I don't think it's that different maybe from other domains.
Like academia.
Like academia, or maybe like I don't know, any type
Banking.
of organization. Yeah,
Finance.
like public sector, or I don't know.
And speaking of similarities to academia, of course, I'm going to ask about contracts. And in academia, you would also have you have this situation where you are, if you're a young professional, early career, quote unquote, you are typically employed for a limit for a fixed amount, for a fixed number of months or years.
Yeah.
Is that also same in TNO, for instance?
No, well, yeah, I think TNO is in that sense more like any other type of regular organization where you get a first appointment for a year, and then often that's just prolonged, unless you're doing something really strange or not. Yeah. So and in this economic environment, they are very happy to hire good people. So I think most of our colleagues after 6 to 9 months know that they can stay for, and you get a fixed contract basically.
Yeah.
Which is really nice at this age, like when you have small children or not yet small children, but you're planning to, or you want to buy a house at some point, or those types of decisions. It's very nice that you're not dependent on a string of how do you say that, non-fixed contracts.
No, they're fixed. Like
yeah, so they're fixed.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Fixed. Yeah, and I mean a permanent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we get a fixed contract, and then like a postdoc is. What's the term?
No, fixed is when it's the term is fixed.
Yeah.
And
permanent is when it's not
fixed.
So that's what
the
one I mean. Yeah,
I'm confused for a long time, but then I
Sorry.
found out.
Yeah.
Bepaalde tijd.
Yeah, onbepaalde tijd. Exactly.
Great. No, that's another incentive to join.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a bit. It sounds maybe a bit basic, but at some point in your career, it's quite nice.
Absolutely.
But probably 10 years from now, I might even care less. I'm not sure, but for now, it's nice.
Yeah. And in terms of people who are not joining after 6 or 9 months, how many of those are? Do you notice?
Oh, I don't know.
Or is it most people who are hired then are staying?
Yeah, unless I know, for instance, of a former colleague who did after a year prefer academia, so then they might go back to postdoc or maybe another position. Yeah, that happens, but that's yeah.
Talking about industry, any drawbacks that you see? You've painted a very attractive picture at the moment.
That was not my intention. I mean, I definitely see drawbacks. Like for me, it has been a struggle to. I want to continue the topic of my PhD, but there was not so much. There was not like a pre-existing team already working on that topic, like urban nature and mainstreaming urban nature.
There we go.
So I'm still trying to form that myself, and I have the feeling that it's slowly getting off the ground now, but I've been working there for 3 years already, right? So it's like you need a long breath for that. Is that even an English expression? It is in Dutch.
Oh, it's like you need to
lange adem. You need to have a bit of patience
to prepare.
Patience to build that up. Also, I haven't written a paper in 3 years. This is actually the one I'm presenting now. It's still work in progress. It's been quite a while, and at the university I got a lot more space to do that. What else? Oh yeah, of course you have TNO, and this might hold for other big organizations. It is a bit of a bureaucratic monster. So in terms of understanding where the money comes from, where you can find opportunities to do things that you like I don't know, follow a course, or I don't know, do something extra. It takes a while, or you need to know the right people, or it's not so easy to navigate at first, I would say.
Yeah.
So I'm still learning as well.
Yeah. Oh, no, but it's also comparable to the university, right?
Yeah,
In a way.
where you have to get your funding and your grants and.
Yeah, there was during my PhD there were so many opportunities that I didn't know about.
Yeah.
Training opportunities.
Of
or,
course, yeah.
Grants for going to a conference somewhere.
And we are also actively working on that within my team. Like when we get new people in, we want to mentor them a little bit better, because we experienced a lot of colleagues like just having to swim for the first year in such a big organization, and we're trying to improve that. But that's definitely a struggle.
Oh, good initiative.
Well, yeah.
So for 3 years you've been in TNO. What is next for you? Continuing in TNO for now?
I wish I knew. I have no idea. I wish I could say like, I have this 10-year plan. But I see, I want to build out my expertise on urban nature and governing for urban nature and multifunctionality in cities and integral interventions and how to govern those. I really would like to build out that expertise more, and I'm also still trying to seek out the opportunities to do that within the projects that I can do. I'm not sure. I'm not like it. I'm happy currently at so I'm not planning a next move, but I would also not be opposed to changing at some point in the future. I recently reached out to like a former colleague asking like, hey, how does it work to have like a part-time teaching appointment at a university while still at TNO? Like I'm exploring those type of options, because like I said, I think at the start, like I'm really bad at choosing, so I'm always trying to find the best of both world option.
Okay.
So that's a continuing search.
Yeah. Good luck.
Yeah.
Research,
Thanks.
And very, very cool to chat with you about it and to give this kind of perspective on how does it happen in industry. What is industry for transition studies?
I love that you keep calling it industry, because I have no experience of industry whatsoever. But I understand what you mean.
Like working in a less of an academic.
Like more practice oriented research or was happy to answer your questions. Hopefully I didn't sketch a too sunny picture. I hope I was realistic enough.
Yes. Anything to shout out that you want transition scholars to know?
I mean, I think we should not think in academia versus research institutes. I think we have a lot to gain, and I know it's already happening, by really collaborating much more. I think we have a lot to learn from each other, but we also are remarkably similar in the knowledge base that we have, the language that we speak. So I think we can more easily find each other in generating impact in society.